Just even on a fundamental level, there's still a lot of conversation that, you know, we need to have. So like, even if we're still having debates regarding like equality between cisgender men and women, gender performance for queer people is like not even.
C'est même pas sur la table.
Yeah.
Sont même pas encore là.
So it was a way to like the series and like the photography in general for me is kind of a way to, I guess, think about that a little more.
Vraiment intéressant.
DSR aka DatSoundRadio avec Yannis.
Yannis, merci d'être avec nous aujourd'hui. En fait, Yannis, photographe de renommée internationale, on a pu voir tes photos au Cap, à Toronto, à Paris, Lagos, Moscou. En fait, c'est ça, tu as travaillé et tu as voyagé un peu à travers le monde. Et maintenant, on a la chance de t'avoir avec nous aujourd'hui. Merci encore une fois.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here.
C'est un plaisir de partager. Déjà, comment en fait, toi, tu es originaire de Libreville, au Gabon. Tu as grandi au Gabon?
Oui, j'ai grandi au Gabon. En fait, je suis né en France.
Ok, t'es en France.
Je suis né dans une petite ville française à côté de Grenoble. Enfin, ma mère habitait à Grenoble, mais l'histoire avec Grenoble, c'est qu'il n'y a pas d'hôpital à Grenoble.
Il n'y a pas d'hôpital?
Non, il n'y a pas de... En fait, et j'ai appris ça récemment en plus, que genre, en fait, à Grenoble, c'est que des cliniques.
Okay.
Et il y a beaucoup de gens qui partaient, qui voyageaient. Et l'hôpital le plus proche, c'est dans une petite ville qui s'appelle La Tronche. Et genre, le nom est tellement stupide que genre, il y a beaucoup de gens, ma mère me disait, il y a beaucoup de gens, ils veulent pas voir La Tronche. Du coup, ils partent, je sais pas, elle me disait, ils partent un peu plus loin et tout, mais elle s'en foutait, donc bon, je suis né à La Tronche. Donc voilà.
Mais tu as grandi. Donc,
mais j'ai grandi, mais ouais. Mais j'ai grandi. Je suis né là-bas, mais on est parti de là-bas, j'avais 1 an, je pense. Okay. Du coup, j'ai même pas de souvenirs. En fait. J'ai vraiment grandi à Libreville. Et je suis parti de Libreville quand j'ai eu mon bac à 18 ans.
Wow!
Donc, en 2013.
C'est ça, donc tes premières inspirations, donc le début de. En fait, je vais te demander comment tu es devenu photographe. Et ça s'est passé à Libreville?
À Libreville, ouais. Genre au lycée. Avec l'ennui, on s'ennuyait en fait. Un week-end avec des amis. Et j'avais une amie elle était déjà photographe, de hobby en fait. Elle avait une caméra, tout ça. Et genre une fois, on s'ennuyait. Et on s'est dit, on a commencé à prendre des photos en fait.
Aussi banal que ça, comme ça.
Juste comme ça. Et genre, et après on s'est dit, that was nice actually. Et après, elle nous a montré comment, parce que c'était elle un peu la photographe.
Elle vous montrait en fait comment.
Du coup, elle m'a montré comment, elle utilisait, c'était pas Photoshop à l'époque, c'était un truc qui s'appelait photofiltre. Okay. Donc c'était un peu, c'est comme Photoshop, mais beaucoup plus simplifié, beaucoup plus, c'était gratuit aussi, je pense. Et donc elle m'a montré comment manipuler les photos de cette façon, des trucs comme ça. Et donc c'était ça ma première introduction à la photographie en tant que pratique.
Mais parce que tu as appris par toi-même en fait, c'était le début de ta carrière du moins.
Ouais, je dirais c'est elle qui m'a montré les bases quand même. Ouais. Mais Héloïse, shout out. Mais mais ouais, on a vraiment appris. C'était vraiment après cette première fois, on a vraiment commencé à continuer. Je me rappelle, on commençait à rajouter, like it was becoming a thing, I guess.
Ouais.
Like every weekend, it was like, okay, we're gonna take photos, we're gonna like have friends who are gonna come in, and like I remember we would have like more and more people would be like interested and like.
That's nice.
So yeah.
À quel moment tu as commencé à te questionner par rapport à la représentation? Parce que je t'ai écouté dans un TED Talk, que t'expliquais en fait l'importance, surtout pour le continent africain, de reprendre le narratif sur se représenter soi-même. À quel moment tu as commencé à réfléchir à cette idée-là?
So that happened so after I graduated high school, I went to university in Toronto, University of Toronto, in Mississauga actually.
Okay.
So when I got there, so I lived on campus on my first year. And so when I got there, it was a lot of international students, obviously coming from like
Everywhere.
wherever.
Yeah.
All of us, we were living in like a townhouse, and it was 4 of us. One of us was from Vietnam or Taiwan. I think it was Taiwan actually. Yeah, one of us was from Taiwan. The other was from like Italy, and the other one was from the Caribbeans. I forgot which island. And then we had like neighbors from like Japan, and then like from like wherever.
Yeah,
and so nice. Everybody, when we would do like introductions and talk about like where we come from, everybody would be like, oh yeah, I'm from Japan, I'm from Nigeria, I'm from wherever. And then I realized that like the majority of people would not know where I came from. So when I would be like, I'm from Gabon, they would be like, I have no idea where that is. And they would be very honest with it, which, I mean, it's fine. It's a very small country. We're not even 2 million of like people living there. So it's very small, and but even beyond just not knowing the country, I realized in my first year that a lot of people had just had like misconceptions about like Africans and like in culture. In general. Yeah. And so when I went back in the summer, I remember I went back the first summer after my first year of university. I went back there for like the entirety of the summer, so like 4 months. Yeah. And so I decided to like, capture the country and like the culture and the people in like a way deliberately to show, I guess, like the more authentic side, or like the more, I guess, my own perspective.
Yeah.
Of, like,
montrer en fait souvent ce que toi tu vois quand tu retournes. Mais c'est fou que tu dis ça, parce que même nous, en tant qu'Africains aussi, en tant que Rwandais pour moi, Burundais également, je réalise que moi, personnellement, je ne sais pas comment dans un autre pays les gens vivent.
Yeah,
comme je réalise que même moi, j'ai une limite par rapport à ça.
Yeah. Parce que moi, so like, speaking of Rwanda, I went there I remember I was going a few years ago. I was still in high school back then. Okay. And so I was supposed to go to South Africa, and we took one there. So like we went through, and I remember one flight got canceled. And so we had to spend like the day, I think, there. So I remember going from the airport to the hotel. I was like, are we really in Africa? Like it looked like it was it looked completely different. Yeah. Like it was like a completely different landscape. It was a completely different, like, even like the air was different. Like it did not feel like where I came from. So it was very, so I was like, wow, that's wild that it's like, it's very, and then when you go to Morocco, like it's very, so yeah, like you said, it's like we have very limited ideas of like how, because pour nous, c'est juste, on a que les stéréotypes que les autres qui affectent l'Occident nous affectent aussi en fait, parce que on consomme tous les mêmes médias, on consomme tous les mêmes choses. 100%. So it's like we also internalize these ideas about like others, right? Like one thing about, I mean, I love my country, but we're very arrogant, and we're very
it's
like,
true?
Yeah, we're very like, or I mean, we used to be very like autant en fait, like you know, like oh les Gabonais sont, you know,
comme
like,
ça, ouais, c'est ça.
Yeah. And yeah, but because we, in our minds, we have very stereotypical ideas about how others live, right?
Exactly.
And I'm sure they also have like their own. So yeah, so it was important for me to kind of capture the people and the culture in my own, with my own like lens and with my own perspective.
Mais c'est vraiment bon parce que non seulement tu fais ça par rapport au pays, mais tu fais aussi avec la diaspora. Dans le sens que tu présentes Tu présentes à quoi que. En fait, les multiples visages, les multiples. Puis, t'es-tu aussi l'aspect de l'intersectionnalité dans le sens que tu vas présenter des gens avec une sexualité différente, une orientation par exemple, ou un genre différent? Pourquoi c'est important aussi d'aller plus loin que seulement dire ah, voici un Africain? De rentrer aussi dans le détail, de représenter différents types de personnes.
Parce que justement, c'est ça qui nous manque en fait. Ou c'est ce qui nous manquait, le détail. You know, like parce que généralement, c'était toujours. Les Africains ont toujours été représentés de façon très unidimensionnelle. So it's very simplified, it's very limited, and it's very like hollow. Like it's like.
Tout le monde ressemble à ça.
Ouais, voilà, exactement. So, and it's not even close to the truth. So like, it was very important for me to reflect also my own experiences and like, kind of showing, like a lot of a big aspect of my work is also like generational. So like capturing like kind of the people from my own generation of like African. So like, what does it mean to be young and African, but still like living in like this world that is like interconnected and where you're like, you know, in conversation constantly with like everyone else. Right. So like, how does your identity and how does your place in the world as an African kind of reflect the way people interact with you and think about you? Yeah. And so I'm really interested in kind of exploring like the different facets of like Africans, like how and like and also especially in ways that we might not necessarily think. So like queer Africans and like Africans that like that perform gender in like unconventional ways, etc.
Mais ce qui est intéressant aussi, j'ai l'impression, c'est que ça permet à des gens à différents endroits dans le monde de réaliser que tu existes aussi, tu peux être queer comme tu as dit, tu peux être différent, tu peux sortir du moule que l'Africain doit ressembler. Et c'est important de se voir à travers partout. Donc,
c'est important pour moi parce que ça nous humanise en fait. Ça nous and those are the things that kind of change the way people think about you and the way people interact with you. And so when that changes, then it can lead to like, you know, it leads to less discrimination, it leads to less exploitation of the continent and etc. So I think kind of showing the humanity and the diversity of experiences across the board is a good I would hope to think that it's kind of a good contribution to like working towards thinking about Africans more like differently.
Absolument. Avant de tomber dans la prochaine section, je voulais revenir sur un des sons. On t'a demandé de nous envoyer quelques chansons. Et une des premières chansons que tu nous as envoyées, c'est If You Only Know de Savannah. Yeah. Est-ce que tu peux m'en parler un peu? Pourquoi tu as choisi cette chanson-là?
It's just a song I listen to a lot when I edit photos. It's a song I discovered in Paris, actually, like at the beginning of the year. And so, I don't know, I just listen to it.
Especially when you edit photos, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's a song, honestly, I've listened to it a lot while I was there. Like, when I was outside, when I was walking, when I was doing like whatever. And so I guess it just reminds me of like, a really creative, because it was a very creative time for me because I was literally only doing just that.
Okay, ça c'est
and
nice,
so it kind of, it's like a...
Ça te remet dans ce mood-là.
Yeah.
Mais justement, c'est quoi ton processus par rapport à la musique? Est-ce que pendant que tu édites ou quand tu prends des photos, est-ce que tu aimes ça avoir un certain mood, une certaine vibe? Comment tu fonctionnes par rapport à ça?
Especially when I edit. I really like editing. I know a lot of photographers don't really like editing, but it's actually, I think, one of the parts I look forward to the most.
Ah ouais.
Ouais, tu disais un truc vraiment intéressant. Je trouve que tu disais que pour toi, c'était un moment que ça te permettait d'être critique sur ton travail.
Yeah, because it's the only time where you actually... Because when you're taking photos, you don't really look at them. Like, because you're
t'es trop de,
very, like, you're into, like, whatever's happening. So you don't have time to, like, actually sit with the image and, like, critique and think about what you could do better. And so it's only after the fact, which kind of sucks because it's only like after the fact
fini,
that you're like, oh, I wish
Yeah.
I did that, or I wish, you know. But it's, yeah, I think it's the only time where you're like, you can really sit with your image, and also because it's the only time where you see the image in like kind of its raw. You're the only person who's gonna ever, I mean, maybe unless somebody's like next to you or whatever, like you're the only person who's ever going to see the image in that way. And so it's an important step for me to kind of
Un moment
be
tout
able
était
to,
avec le... Ouais.
yeah, like just to be able to like critique myself and to be like, maybe next time we're gonna try this, or maybe next time, yeah.
Tu es principalement un photographe de portrait, mais ce que je trouvais intéressant quand tu présentais par exemple une série, c'est que tu rajoutes des textes, tu mets un peu en contexte. Pourquoi c'est important pour toi justement de raconter une histoire avec tes photos? Parce que souvent justement c'est ça... I'm sorry? Qu'est-ce que tu as dit?
I'm not sure.
Ben, parce qu'à chaque fois que c'est ça que je trouvais intéressant, c'était pas seulement une photo que tu présentais, tu amenais un contexte. Tu faisais par exemple aussi des références avec la culture africaine, le passé,
Yeah.
et tu présentais une vision contemporaine par exemple de...
I mean, I guess a lot of it is to just talk about or present some of the things that inspired me to take the image, and just to like maybe in one way to kind of present this information to people who might not have access to it, right?
Mhm.
So I'm
Right.
really interested in like exploring things or different aspects of culture, especially like sub-Saharan African culture, that are not necessarily as known or as common or as visible as others. So I'm really interested in currently exploring like the importance and the social function of mythology
Ouais, dans
in
les...
like Africa, and like in the especially in like pre-colonial African societies, and kind of how to like translate that into like a contemporary like modern lens. But I'm really interested in like the mythologies that are less, like when you think about mythology in Africa, you think about like the Orishas, right? Like
Ouais,
that's
ouais,
like
les
the
classiques,
main and like the most
Non.
famous and the most popular and the most visible, and that's fine, that's great. But I'm really interested in exploring kind of the stories that are
Less common.
yeah.
Justement, j'aimerais ça qu'on revienne sur quelques séries que tu as faites qui étaient intéressantes. Pigment, que justement tu payes hommage, on parle un peu justement de tradition, tu payes hommage au body painting à travers
Yeah.
la photographie. Est-ce que tu peux me parler un peu du processus par rapport à cette série de photos?
So Pigment was inspired by a book that my uncle gave me, actually, called Natural Fashion by N. Sylvester. And so Natural Fashion is a book of portraits of different tribes in Eastern Africa,
Okay.
and it kind of highlights the art of like body painting and the art of like like the body painting,
La tradition
and
du body
the
painting.
tradition and the importance and kind of like the social function of it. And so we wanted to, me and a really talented makeup artist from Montreal, Ama Lafoussi,
OK. Ah, t'as travaillé avec elle sur d'autres séries
Yeah.
aussi. Ouais, c'est ça, exact. OK.
we wanted to kind of pay homage to that, and but put it in like a modern and contemporary way. So like so one thing that we really liked about their process was that they were using like kind of the earth, right? I mean, that's
Ouais.
really
Le-
but obviously they were using like nature.
Yeah.
And so we but what she did is that she found these pigments that were kind of like I mean, I don't know the science behind it. I just know it looked really nice.
Yeah.
But it was kind of replicating kind of like the nature, like the process.
Ce qu'eux pouvaient faire justement.
Yeah, and it looked like powder, but the thing is that it was like with like these very vibrant colors. So it was kind of like a futuristic take on like that tradition, right?
Ouais.
And so yeah, we wanted to explore that and kind of put that forward with.
Ouais, vraiment intéressant. Une autre des séries justement que tu as fait qui explore un autre sujet par contre, The Darkest Color. Et là, on touchait davantage, encore on touche un peu avec la couleur qui est le noir, mais aussi avec le sujet de la mort. Pourquoi c'était important de présenter ça? Qu'est-ce que tu voulais chercher dans ce...
With The Darkest Color, I wanted to... Actually, The Darkest Color initially is a project I did for school.
For school?
Oh,
Okay.
ouais.
Yeah.
C'était un mandat? Ou même pas?
It was... So the prompt was was it like every month or something? We had to do like a... So we were supposed to have a theme, right? And then we were supposed to have like 4 different interpretations of like that theme, I guess. And so or like the word or something, I forgot what it was. My theme was black, just black. And so I was kind of exploring with different series,
Okay.
like kind of the different aspects of black. I don't even remember what I did for the others. But I know that one, I was interested in kind of the meaning and like the cultural significance of the color, right? So it started by going from, so when we think about black, usually it's associated with death and with like tragedy and like all of that. And so I wanted to kind of explore that, but like represent it in like in a narrative, right?
Ouais,
So
ouais.
like in the story.
Mais dans un contexte, ouais.
Yeah, so in the story, basically, the story is about this guy who's trying to fight or kind of to escape death, kind of throughout the whole series, and like the series ends with him kind of laying on death. So death is represented by a female form.
Ouais, exactement, la femme qui est dans
And my very good friend Tanya, and yeah, it's the series end by basically showing that regardless of what you do, I mean, you're not gonna win. Like, it's not. So, but it was, I wanted to represent it in like kind of like, it looked like he was sleeping as opposed to like, and like peaceful as opposed to like.
Quelque chose de sombre et de...
Yeah, exactly. Ouais. So...
Non, parce qu'on peut être habillé en noir et peut être bien aussi, là, comme on le
yeah, but yeah, so that's kind of the idea I had, to kind of like think about that, the significance of the color and explore that.
Vraiment intéressant. Et une autre série qui m'avait fasciné, c'était The First Woman. Et ça, c'est un peu avec ce que tu disais avec la mythologie et la spiritualité, mais vu d'une lentille plus contemporaine. Est-ce que tu peux m'expliquer un peu?
So, yeah, so like I was saying, I was really interested in like stories that wouldn't really necessarily be, or that are not as visible. So I was reading about mythology from like Eastern Africa. And so I came across like these Sudanese like stories from like Sudan. And so like I came across this story about this woman who fell to earth with her husband and who tried to like kind of, the entire time she tried to like go back up to heaven, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, that's really cool. I wanna maybe explore it. Yeah. And so we went from there, and then yeah.
Ça, je comprends. Je voulais également revenir sur, tu as fait quelque chose de vraiment intéressant, je trouve, avec Adobe Creative Cloud. C'est que tu partages un peu ton processus créatif et comment tu faisais, par exemple, l'editing.
Yeah.
Et dans ce petit segment-là, ce qui est intéressant, c'est que tu parles du fait que la plupart de tes projets, tu aimes ça les faire de façon très simple, avec peu de lumière, même dans ton salon. Pourquoi c'est important pour toi d'avoir une approche simple et super humaine, super...
Well, mostly I don't have a studio.
Ça règle tout.
So we're doing whatever we have. I remember this, actually I started indoor photography. I remember before being very scared of like lights and stuff. And like being very scared of like, so I remember the first time I took photos in the studio, I think was like a whole semester after
Ok, t'avais commencé.
ouais.
because I was terrified. But before, what I was doing is that I would go like indoors with whatever, like if there was. So when I used to live in Toronto, I had a friend who I was collaborating with often, who was living in a building with like really colored walls, and we would just go in the hallway of her buildings and just shoot there.
Okay.
And it would look like a studio, like so you wouldn't even like if I didn't tell you it was in a studio, you wouldn't know. So that was like my way of like.
Mais c'est encore le cas, même avec les photos, parce que dans la série, tu nommes quelques photos que tu as prises dans ton salon.
Yeah.
Et c'est incroyable parce que tu
I mean,
peux
the
pas
darkest color I did.
C'est-
Most of my photos actually, I've taken them in my living room.
Mais c'est
Ah
incroyable,
ouais.
ouais, c'est ça.
Puis là, les lumières, ça va? Ça...
Yeah. Now they're like actual like studio lights. I mean, not with the darkest color though. I think the darkest color was before I got to the studio. Like it was
Ok,
before I got to.
C'était après la
I was
transition,
like,
c'est là
yeah,
que
it
t'étais
was,
à l'aise.
But yeah, so it's important for now. Anyways, it's important to be simple, mostly because like I know for the most part what I want, and so like it doesn't really. Like I don't need to do a whole lot. Like I'm
T'as pas
Pas
extra,
besoin de
c'est
forcer,
ça.
yeah,
ouais,
like
c'est ça.
I'm very like if I know how to get that, and so whichever way is the simplest way to go there, it's what we're gonna do.
J'aime ça que tu dis ça. J'aimerais revenir sur un fait aussi, parce que quand on regarde tes photos dans un ensemble, on remarque que tes photos, comme tu dis, sont super vibrantes, sont très fortes. Est-ce qu'il y a une raison? Est-ce que tu recherches quelque chose par rapport aux couleurs? C'est quoi ta relation avec les couleurs?
I don't know. I like
C'est très intuitif. Parce que tu pensais
Yeah.
que tu avais mentionné que tu disais que ça pouvait peut-être aussi te faire penser à la maison, au fait qu'il y
I
avait quelque
guess
chose
it's a way to like, because Libreville is a very vibrant, or Gabon in general is a very vibrant country, and it's very like.
Donc pour toi, c'était juste naturel. Tu veux juste nous représenter l'énergie
I
que...
guess so, yeah. Yeah, it's just a way for me to kind of represent, because that's like.
C'est comme ça que tu vois, en fait.
Yeah,
C'est-
like
c'est-
I don't see like what's the point in having like muted colors? I don't know. I
C'est-
personally don't really see the point in that.
Mais
but-
j'aime ta réponse parce que c'est juste naturel.
C'est
C'est ça,
naturel,
il y a
ouais.
pas, tu te forces pas.
Ouais, non, c'est bien.
Yeah.
Avant de changer de catégorie aussi, j'aimerais revenir sur une autre une autre des chansons que tu nous as présentées, qui est All This Changes by Nick Hakim.
Hakim. Yeah, that's also a song. Honestly, all the songs, it's just the songs that like they don't really have. It's just songs I listen to a lot. So like that song specifically is like a song I listen to. I've been listening to I think for like a year or so. When almost every time I edit, and I just really like.
Est-ce que tu écoutes la musique à l'extérieur? Est-ce que tu écoutes la musique souvent quand tu édites ou est-ce que tu en écoutes aussi à d'autres moments? Ou c'est vraiment un moment pour toi que là tu choisis ta musique? Et
I
c'est-
don't really listen to music. It's like I only listen to music when I'm doing something. For the
Ah
most
ouais.
part. Like it's very hard for me to just be like, okay, I'm about to listen to music.
Mais parce que attends un petit peu, un des chocs que tu nous as envoyé, c'est Boomerang de Down Richard.
Yeah,
Tu peux
it's
pas écouter
that-
ça
I was editing with it yesterday.
T'écoutes ça durant ton editing?
Yeah.
Mais c'est une chanson qui
And
bouge.
also, I mean that, and also that
T'es
when I'm
debout, c'est
like,
quoi?
I'm doing other stuff, but that it's. I mean, that one is not typical. I agree, but
Mais c'est une bonne énergie, c'est ce que
Yeah.
j'imagine pas être en train
But
de faire
it's,
des retouches sur... ça bouge beaucoup, c'est
But
très-
that's like I listen to that one specifically just when I do like when I was getting when you're getting ready, when you're like
Ouais.
it's just like a song that and like it's the type of song that you don't mind. That's like replay that has
Ouais, c'est ça, tu peux
a
jouer comme
very
ça,
good
ouais.
replay value. Like you could play like 100 times and it doesn't matter.
Je comprends.
So-
Fait que quand tu te prépares, toi, c'est hype. Quand tu es en train de te préparer, l'énergie est élevée, là. Tu es dans un...
Yeah,
dans
like
un-
like and then also like when you're taking photos. I mean it depends on the photo too, I guess.
Ouais.
Like
Et avec
the
qui tu
music
shoots aussi.
and avec qui, etc. Mais yeah.
Parce que tu sais, j'aimerais ça revenir aussi sur tes influences, parce que tu mentionnais quelques artistes, puis je trouvais ça intéressant. Malik CDB, Lina, Iris Victor et Stephen Klein.
Yeah.
Est-ce que tu peux me parler un peu de ces trois artistes qui t'ont influencé, que tu trouves intéressants?
Malik Sidibé is a photographer from Mali, who was like one of the pioneers in like what we consider to be African photography, or like post-colonial African photography. And so his work was really inspiring because it was kind of one of the first who was able to kind of capture African cultures in like its authenticity and like beyond like the colonial like narrative.
Ouais.
So he was showing them like dancing, he was showing them going to parties.
Exactement. Je pense que c'est une photo justement classique. C'est une photo que tout le monde connaît, la photo qui
les
danse.
deux, il y a les deux qui dansent là.
Ouais, exactement.
Yeah,
Mais
exactly.
ça rend tellement heureux. Tout le monde qui la voit, t'es juste...
And it's like, it was literally, that was like unheard of before like him and Seydou Keita and like a few others in like West Africa were like kind of doing this work of showing like showing images that show Africa beyond like the colonial narrative. And so that's something that really is inspiring to me and that I carry with like...
Ouais, it resonates with you.
Yeah. Lina Iris Victor is a painter / photographer who's from London / Liberia, and she's really good at like, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just good.
It's a good vibe. Yeah, it's just really, it's
just really good.
Mais je connaissais pas, je t'en prie grâce à toi.
Her, so she's one of these artists who voluntarily limits herself into like a very specific language.
Ouais.
And I think that's the thing that inspires me the most about her actually is that, and about like all my favorite artists are artists that limit themselves voluntarily and that kind of like grow within that specific limitation. So like I know she only works with 3 colors.
All the time?
Ouais. Tout le temps?
Like just only 3 colors. Whoa. I think gold, black, and blue or something.
Oh.
And yeah, and just with that, she's able to like create like really amazing stories and like exploring like the certain like cultural aspects of Africa, like especially where she comes from, Liberia, and yeah, it's a really inspiring work, especially when it comes to like that.
Ouais, elle se donne un cadre. Est-ce que c'est quelque chose que tu trouves intéressant? Est-ce que toi aussi tu as envie cette rigueur? Est-ce que c'est quelque chose que toi personnellement dans ton processus créatif, c'est quelque chose que tu aimerais aussi te
yeah, I try to be I think it's important for me anyways as an artist to be limited in terms of, or not limited necessarily, but specific, maybe it's a better word, in terms of like what I want to say, because because as a photographer you have different series, right? But even with that, I'm looking at my work as like a whole body of work,
an
ensemble, exactly. And so whenever that is, when I'm gonna be like, okay, I'm done, I would like for it to make some sort of sense, cohesive. Like I would like for it to be some sort of...
Je te rassure, déjà en ce moment il y a une cohérence. C'est ça déjà en ce moment on comprend l'idée, on comprend le...
Puis est-ce que c'est dur comme pour... Parce que moi je me dis, dans la photographie, il faut avoir beaucoup d'imagination, il faut être créatif. Le fait de comme se limiter, est-ce que c'est comme un contraste, je trouve. Donc, est-ce que c'est dur de justement se limiter?
Not to me anyways. I think to me it's like, what's the most interesting part about it is that, okay, what can I do with that very specific niche I'm in? And like, how many stories are like, because photography is subjective, like you can literally do anything, right? And still find a way for it to make sense with like what you want to represent or like what you want to say as an artist. So, yeah.
Mais c'est ça qui est fou parce que dans ton cadre, parce que tu parlais justement de la question d'être cohérent dans ton travail, et tu mentionnais que même dans les mandats que tu reçois, ils te laissent une liberté dans ta démarche, ils conservent la démarche que tu es déjà en train d'entreprendre. Est-ce que c'est... Parce que j'ai l'impression que les gens comprennent ce que tu veux faire, donc ils donnent le respect de dire, on te donne un mandat, mais just do you.
Yeah, I've been very lucky to have that like opportunity to just do like to have that creative freedom,
Mhm.
to just be like, okay, we want you to shoot with this camera, I guess, but we don't really like, there is no follow-up or there is no, it's just like, okay, just let us know when you're ready, type of thing.
Mais j'ai l'impression que ça veut dire que les gens comprennent ta démarche dans ce cas-là, ou ça résonne pour eux, en fait.
I guess there's like an understanding of like kind of the type of image I'm creating.
Ouais.
And so but that comes with limitation, I guess. Like that comes with like, because I mean maybe not, because I mean there are photographers who are like, who can do like a bunch of different things or still have that creative freedom, but for me the thing for me is that I'm not even interested in doing anything else.
C'est dans un moment que tu sais ce que tu veux faire.
It's not even like, I've tried and I've been in situations where I was like, why am I doing this? I don't care about this, you know, because it's not as aligned with kind of like the images I want to create. So
est-ce que c'est quelque chose que tu préfères? Je pense que c'est intéressant ce que tu dis, parce que souvent il y a une question en tant qu'artiste de dire, est-ce que je sors de mes intentions de mon cadre, par exemple pour de l'argent ou pour more exposure, ou tu dis je reste authentique, mais il doit y avoir aussi pas une dualité, mais des fois ça va être tentant de vouloir...
it's something I think about often actually, but because it's very easy, especially with photography, to kind of lose yourself in that. Like it's very easy to kind of dilute your message. You can do it which is like the wrong, not necessarily the wrong project, but yeah. And so I guess it's just up to like what matters most to you. And so like if success or like financial success at that specific moment is what is more important than like the preservation of the body of work as a whole in long term, then that's fine. For me personally, I care more about the whole. So there are a lot of things I just won't do.
Tu feras pas un shortcut justement juste pour...
Yeah.
Je comprends.
Because it's like, and because there are things I have done and I was like, this was not serving. Because if it's not serving me, it's not going to serve you. Because I'm not going to be good.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be, because if I'm not interested, it's not going to be, it's going to be okay, I guess, but it's not going to be as good as it would have been had it been something that I cared about, if that makes sense.
Absolument. Et c'est important.
Yeah, so, and I think that's why I'm like, I just might as well just do, what matters.
Et comme tu dis, de toute façon, les gens, à un certain point, vont venir à toi. Ils vont vouloir collaborer pour ce que tu es, pour ce que tu représentes.
Yeah.
J'aimerais parler de qu'est-ce qu'Internet t'a permis de faire parce qu'Internet était une démocratisation pour les médias et surtout comme on parlait de représentation, ça l'a aidé à permettre, par exemple, à l'Afrique de se représenter soi-même. Mais qu'est-ce que ça a fait pour toi dans ton travail personnel?
Internet, I think for me and for others, it just allowed us to kind of have like some sort of platform, right? Where previously where it would have been significantly harder for us to for people to see our images.
Pas d'internet, bro.
Exactly.
Like before, you literally had to go into the photo agencies and for people to, and people would just think about it as a young African photographer. It's where.
Où t'aurais trouvé, c'est ça exactement. Comment t'aurais pu pour.
Unless, it's those are the type of things where it's you would just build your archive and then it would be a thing where it's 50 years after your death or something. Somebody find your photos and you're like, oh yeah, he was doing that.
He was good.
Nice.
He was good.
Well, thankfully now with internet and we're able to just create and share it and for it to kind of reach people regardless of where they are, which is really cool.
Ben justement, ça vient aussi avec une question que je t'ai demandé parce que j'ai l'impression que tu as réussi, tu viens de Libreville, tu es allé à Paris aussi. Comment tu voyages beaucoup, comment tu fais pour collaborer justement et tisser des liens avec des gens comme ça à travers le monde? Est-ce que c'est grâce justement aux plateformes? Comment toi tu as développé cette communauté-là?
It's internet, honestly. Just you find, especially Paris, it was like off of just one person, and that one person just grew into like.
Ça te permet de te bouger dans le
Yeah, and it's like it's a very creative city, and like it's a very, especially like the African community there is very
active, involved.
active and present, and so like, and especially now, we're all really interested in kind of putting the continent and the culture like forward,
Ouais.
and so we're really interested in creating this kind of work, right? Like creating this work that is like highlighting the culture and the people, and so thankfully with internet we're able to like find each other easily and like
collaborer ensemble. Est-ce que tu sens que, parce que tu nommes Paris, ça revient souvent pour toi, est-ce que tu sens qu'il y a quelque chose de particulier qui se passe à Paris, ou c'est un mouvement que tu sens global, mondial, quand même pour les Africains, je parle en termes de représentation, ou il y a quelque chose de chaud à Paris? Là?
Global. I think it's just Paris. It's just because I've been there personally.
Ouais.
But I think it's more of it feels like it's global. Like it feels like it's globally. There's just like a
Something
heightened awareness in terms of like identity, like specifically the African identity, separated from the Black identity. Just like the African, like who you are as an African from the continent, and how and what that means to like the world, right? Like what that means to like the interactions you're gonna have with people, and like all of that.
Absolument. Je vais revenir sur récemment, tu as fait une exposition au Never Apart, qui était en fait ta plus importante en termes de pièces, mais aussi t'expliquer que c'était en termes aussi de la taille de ce que tu présentais.
Yeah.
Est-ce que tu peux nous expliquer un peu, raconte-nous comment c'était, qu'est-ce que tu as présenté en fait?
So it was 4 different. So I presented 17 photos, I think it was.
Ok, quand même.
From 4 different bodies of works, but it was all exploring kind of like the idea of like gender performance, and so kind of like going beyond expected, like the expectations of like masculinity and femininity, and like but that all of that related to like the Black and like African identity. So all of the series that were in that show were exploring that, and exploring like futurism in relation to like, so essentially what would kind of having a picture of like what would the world, or like the ideal world, look like in the future, I guess. And so
Et qu'est-ce que ça disait justement?
To me it was just like a more diverse and a freer way of like expression. So like expression regardless of whatever conventions that have been imposed upon us, especially in Africa. Gender roles are very
très dur, très rigide.
They're very exactly. So kind of showing like a different perspective to that, I guess.
Est-ce que tu sens justement qu'on est à un point que justement cette rigidité-là est en train de se briser? Est-ce que tu sens qu'il y a
a little bit, but I feel like there's still, in the society at large, there's still like resistance. So especially in Gabon. So in Gabon, actually, when was it? A few weeks ago, there was like a law that passed that was like saying something along the lines of like, le père n'est plus le chef de famille.
Okay.
And so it was essentially to put everybody just like on equal ground, right?
Ouais.
And but it was that turned into like a lot of like debate and like a lot of
ça a été pris durement là.
Yeah, and I wasn't really following the whole thing, but from what I saw, a lot of people weren't happy with that, with just the idea of like putting the men down to like an equal level to the women, right? And so that was just showing me, especially, that there's just still, just even on a fundamental level, there's still a lot of conversation that, we need to have. So like, even if we're still having debates regarding like equality between cisgender men and women, gender performance for queer people is like not even.
C'est même pas sur la table.
C'est même pas,
ils sont même pas encore là.
So it was a way to like, the series and like the photography in general for me is kind of a way to, I guess, think about that a little more.
Vraiment intéressant. En terminant, justement, ma question, c'était exactement par rapport à ça. J'allais dire, comment vois-tu justement l'évolution de la représentation au sein de nos communautés, au sein de la communauté africaine?
Hopefully it's going to go towards like a more diverse and a less stereotypical like representation. So it's going to, because the problem we're running into currently with representation of Africa is that most of it is not done by us, and it's also not done for us. So it's like, and it's also done for very specific capitalistic like reasons, right? So like people explore the African cultures with like movies, but it's like Black Panther, and it's like, look, I love Black Panther, but it's like, and I'm a big fan of like the comic books and stuff, but if you actually look critically at what it means, it's like a capitalist fantasy of like an ideal. It's like a fantasy of an ideal African society, but from a perspective of like a white man.
Qui c'est qui parle à l'autre, exactement. Ouais, c'est ça.
And so what does it mean when this kind of like ideal version of Africa is represented and pushed forward by people who are not us, right? And so yeah, I think.
Mais c'est vraiment important et c'est intéressant parce que moi, en regardant ton travail, ce que j'ai vraiment aimé, ce qui moi m'avait frappé, c'est de dire, c'est comme si je voyais des choses que j'avais pas eu la chance de voir. Que ce soit une représentation différente de l'homme, de la femme, peu importe, mais c'était vraiment un moment pour moi de dire waouh. Et ça existe dans des villes que, justement, à Libreville, il y a quelqu'un qui a les mêmes questionnements que moi sur l'identité. Yeah. Donc ça faisait du bien et ton travail est vraiment important à ce niveau-là.
Yes, it's a good way to think about like society, right? It's a good way to think about like social relations. It's actually like, I mean, because it's visual, obviously, so you're able to picture.
Ouais, ça devient exactement ça. Mais écoute, merci d'avoir pris le temps de t'asseoir avec nous. Honnêtement, c'était une belle ouverture, une belle fenêtre sur toi. Merci beaucoup d'avoir présenté.
Avant de terminer, on veut juste savoir où est-ce qu'on peut voir en fait tes photos, où est-ce qu'on peut te suivre sur les réseaux.
You can see most of my work on yannisdavy.com, and then my Instagram is yannisdavy, and yeah.
C'est certifié déjà, donc tu vas le voir. Il apparaît direct. Yannis, il est certifié, man. Mais merci encore une fois, c'était excellent.
Merci beaucoup.
C'était parfait.
Hey yo, Rain, turn that up. Okay, I hop out of bitch in my red. She wanna Olay. I got your bitch and I dash you say. She love the Gucci, Louis, Fendi, probably leave me for a break. I'm fucking a bitch and me turning